People try to get him, never gonna get him. They walk in the line. Hugo and Jake talking shit and fighting crime. And even if you could catch them, you'd never stop the action. A popular culture walks wheeling on down the road. A popular culture shooting lasers at things that explode. Unpopular culture. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hello Internet, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this is Unpopular Culture, and today we're looking at episodes 2 and 3 of Netflix's Jessica Jones.
We're back! If you've been watching this in order as they come out, and not this isn't a backlog thing, you waited a little bit for this, but it was the holidays when we recorded this, so get over yourself, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it has been a while since we've done episode 1. Some Doctor Who stuff came up, and then some trailers came out, and it's a whole thing. But anyway, we are here to talk about more today. And episodes 2 and 3 are really where stuff gets started, obviously, since introductions are out of the way. So episode 2, aka Crush Syndrome, this is where Jessica begins her search for Kilgrave because now she's well aware that he's still alive, and she goes out to try and figure out what happened using her sleuthing skills.
And the first scene we get is between her and Hope Schlottman. Hope Schlottman being the girl that killed her parents under Kilgrave's control. And they have a really, really interesting conversation. And actually part of this conversation was in the teaser trailers that they did, where she talks about how Kilgrave made her jump for hours and she was never as good as Jessica. But I think the better line in that is when they talk for a little bit and Hope pretty much says, no, you can't go find Kilgrave because he'll use you and you're a superhero. You should kill yourself.
I like that line because it kind of is a theme that runs throughout the entire season, and it's a huge part of Jessica's arc, getting over her PTSD from the abuse she suffered under Kilgrave.
Yeah.
It's that, is her very existence hurting the people around her? She's basically having to decide, should I go after this guy and try and stop him from hurting anyone ever again? Or should I off myself or disappear into the nothingness, wherever, to try and protect the people close to me? There is an argument that you could make that she ended up hurting a lot of people, not her specifically, but her actions made Kilgrave hurt a lot of people. And obviously, not on her, but you can understand how, as someone who has survived that abuse, she could see in her own head thinking it's her own fault. And that's very interesting.
Not a lot of times do I think survivor's guilt is a valid thing, like Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. I don't agree with that, but this kind of thing, yes, because her actions directly lead to him taking it out on other people. Yeah. As a way to get to her. So yeah, I totally understand her character, and I think they do the PTSD and the guilt and all the trauma that she's faced. I think they do that very well because she's really good at playing fake strong.
Yeah,
and being actually vulnerable.
I've heard some criticism, especially, and actually I was surprised after we did our first episode. These are kind of reviews, they're more just discussions, free-form discussions, but a lot of people complained about the acting this season. A lot of people, it turned out, who are fans of Daredevil didn't like this, which surprised me because I enjoyed them both very much. One of the problems was they didn't like Christian Ritter, and they didn't think, some of the criticisms were it felt like she was forcing the character, that she didn't feel like she was actually strong, but I think that's kind of the point. She's supposed to be a very vulnerable person who's gone through this terrible stuff, and she's putting on a front for everyone, so that's why I thought the performance was good. It's supposed to feel like she's kind of faking it. That's exactly the character.
And then after that, Jessica, for the next few episodes, actually for like half the season, she'll be trying to get Jerry, the lawyer, aka Trinity from The Matrix, to take Hope's case and defend her because she knows that like Hope's life is going to be ruined because of what Kilgrave did, and she's trying really hard because she feels guilty to try to get this case taken by one of the best lawyers in the Marvel Universe. And I just like how they kind of add to Jerry's character by having her go through marital issues herself, because she's having an affair with the receptionist or whatever, and that actually becomes, it doesn't just become like a throwaway, it actually has a little bit to do with plot.
Yeah, that was another thing I saw people in the comments of our last video complain about as far as the series is concerned, is they thought there were a lot of subplots going on that were unnecessary, but I genuinely thought all the subplots with all the characters were interesting and added to the character. I didn't think any of it was like throwaway. It really seemed like everything informed the people. It made me understand what they're going through, and it made me understand their growth over the series, or maybe even, some of them getting worse over time. It's just,
and their
I didn't
motivations.
see it as superfluous. Yeah,
absolutely. And also, it's kind of, all this information you're getting kind of reflects back on who Jessica Jones is. She's a private investigator, and she's always getting dirt on everybody. Sure. And she's just getting all this dirt on the people surrounding her. And it's just, and people are more complex than being a one-note, I'm the lawyer. You know what I mean? Like, she would have other shit going on in her life, and it just so happens that this one is going through a divorce, which actually ties into the plot in these next 2 episodes.
Also in this episode, we get more of that weird upstairs twins. I think they're twins.
They're a couple, too, though.
Are they?
They're definitely a couple.
No,
it's definitely a couple thing, because they talk about how kinky they are.
See, I never got that. I watched it, and I get that the implication kind of initially was that it might be kind of a creepy Game of Thrones incesty weird thing going on, but I don't think they ever actually came out and said that.
Well, the thing about it is she was jealous of Jessica because he liked her, but it was like, but the thing is, she said, like, get your own man. You know what I mean? Like, in a way that suggested that he was his sister's man.
No, I understand. I'm not saying there aren't undertones. It's obviously there's intentional undertones of the creepy twin-cest stuff going on. But I don't think they were actually in an official,
maybe, I don't know,
weird incesty relationship.
Either way, it's hilarious. They're some of the best characters in this building.
Oh, they're hilarious. I love them. I don't want to talk about things that happen later, but I like these characters.
I do too.
And I'd like to see something similar next season, but I don't know what they'll do. Maybe different people in the building. Maybe they'll have a different weird people upstairs or something.
So right after that, she'll be taking a bus trying to find stuff about Kilgrave, and she has this flashback to the moment when, like, one of the last moments that Kilgrave was under control, and she punches this woman, who we in a minute will find out is named Reva Connors. The bus ends up getting into an accident because of the actions Jessica is taking, and he gets hit by the bus.
Can I point something out real quick, though? The one thing that really bugged me, not like really, but I'm a nitpicky person, the bus accident itself made no sense. If you look at the visual effect, the bus flips over for, like, no reason. I get that the implication is that it tried to stop short or something.
It tried to turn away, and it flipped, and then Kilgrave gets hit. I don't know if that's super similar to the comics or not. I don't know how it looked, because I haven't read them all. I've only read, like, snippets while prepping for this to come out. But either way, yeah, that was a little hokey. It looked weird. And he gets kind of bounced off it like a bouncy ball.
The criticism I have for this series, the big one, is the effects weren't up to snuff. As they could have put a little bit more money into it, because whenever Jessica tries to fly or does a super strong thing, it's always a camera trick or something super obvious, or when they do a CG thing, it's done pretty badly, like the bus. I understand that they're under budget constraints, but for instance, Netflix just spent $60 million on a shitty Adam Sandler comedy. Netflix, please stop spending money on stupid shit. Give more money to the things that work, like the Marvel shows, and maybe don't hire Adam Sandler 20 years after he told his last funny joke. So Jessica tracks down the ambulance driver, who was the guy who took Kilgrave to the hospital, or at least he was supposed to, but of course Kilgrave ended up disappearing. Goes to his house, one of the best scenes in the series in my opinion, and it sort of punctuates exactly what's different between Daredevil and Jessica Jones. Daredevil is visceral, it's action, it has violence and blood. Jessica Jones has psychologically horrifying things, which I actually like more, and it freaks me out more than, like, violence, because Daredevil can be like, oh, badass, this is fucked up. Goes into this guy's house, he's in a chair, hooked up to a dialysis machine.
In the care of his extremely religious, pretty crazy mother.
Clearly, he's not into this at all. She's kind of weird. You've probably met kind of weird old people who are super religious like this. And she thinks that her son donated both of his kidneys to someone.
Like, out of the kindness of his heart.
To sort of as a recompense for his partying ways, because I guess he used to be maybe an alcoholic or used to do drugs or something. I want to know how dumb this mom is that she thinks any doctor would voluntarily let someone give someone both their kidneys. But anyway, It turns out, of course, Kilgrave ordered him to do this and ordered a doctor to do the surgery
because
for
after
him.
the bus accident, he needed new kidneys, apparently.
But the fucking worst thing is that the mom walks away, the guy's writing a note, he's very infirmed, and he starts writing K-I, and she's like, oh, Kilgrave, where's Kilgrave? But then he spells out, kill me! And,
he plays it so well.
much pain.
Whoever that actor is, this was his one shot. He's going to get more work because he did a really good job. You could see like the fear in his eyes of being trapped in this house with this crazy woman not being able to really express himself, and she probably doesn't listen to a word he says. And then Jessica Jones plays it so well, just like I can't do that. Like, for her, like, she knows it's the selfless and probably the correct thing to do, but for her, she can't put another person's blood on her hands due to Kilgrave. And you can see they're both super fucking broken by this guy.
The best thing is, once she leaves the house, we never see him again, so he just probably lived the rest of his shortened life in this hell for him.
They never wrap that up.
What a terrifying, what a terrible, terrible thing. Beautiful for the show, though. That's a powerful scene. It really shows you how much Kilgrave has screwed up people's lives, but damn, really?
But now we actually get into some superhero fight stuff, which actually this series has very little of. And as for superhero fights, this is a pretty low bar one. Andre, the wife of the woman Luke was accidentally having an affair with, finds out, goes to his bar, and basically Jessica walks in on while it's happening and helps Luke defend himself. During that fight, she pretty much discovers that he's a superhero guy and has like abilities, and he discovers her. She kind of denies it. He totally is not willing to forget it.
Luke Cage was awesome in that fight. I mean, Jessica was okay. This is another criticism people had, that the fight scenes sucked. The fight scenes weren't like the star of the show, though. That's more a Daredevil thing. The investigation and her character was the star of this show. She's not a trained fighter like Daredevil, so of course she's not that competent.
And she's still vulnerable. She's just stronger. Like, she gets hurt all the time. She's not like... I guess people assume she's like Superman because she has all of the similar abilities, minus the X-ray eyes, laser eyes, and the breath. But she's not invulnerable, and she can only like jump high.
Yeah, I mean, a gunshot, if she gets shot, she gets shot. I assume probably stuff like knives, if you hit her hard enough or at the right angle, probably hurt her too. I mean, Luke Cage has the whole skin thing, but she doesn't. She's just strong and durable. I would argue she's probably just durable enough to handle her own strength. You know what I mean? Like, she's durable enough that she has super strength and she can use it without, ripping her bones apart. But anyway, Luke Cage in this scene, very cool, very level-headed, didn't give a fuck, punched people, like, behind his back. Very cool, and it makes me very excited for what Luke Cage is going to be like.
Absolutely. And then after that scene, she kind of walks away because he doesn't really want anything to do with Jessica at that point, just because he doesn't like drama, and she kind of made him experience it. So she leaves, and she keeps she tracks down the serial number for the what's the fucking name? Dialysis. She tracks down the serial number for the dialysis machine, and she had called the day before. In the morning, she wakes up, gets a call from some company, and finds out it was leased out to some doctor who obviously Kilgrave made him do it. And it turns out it's the doctor that performed the surgery on Kilgrave.
Mm-hmm. The revelation here is that, essentially, Kilgrave's powers won't work if he's under anesthetic. This was a little iffy for me as far as a plot point goes, because, if you knock him out, of course he can't use his powers. He's knocked out.
But he was still in control of Jessica while he slept, but it had to be every like, what they say, like 10, 12 hours.
I know, but the way they use the plan and actually end up utilizing it doesn't really rely upon the fact that it would knock out anyone else around him. It's pretty much just, we need to knock him out and grab him so he can't stop us. You know what I mean? They could have achieved the same thing with, like, headphones, which they kind of do later in the series. But, it was basically, they only used it as a way to make sure he can't stop them in the middle of kidnapping him. But that's neither here nor there.
It has a lot more, but I think it's less of a plot point and more to do with Jessica's paranoia.
No, I get what you're saying. I understand. It just seemed it ended up being useless. They could have just easily.
Well, that was kind of the point, though.
No, I understand.
The point was she was going way too far to try to protect herself against Kilgrave. and just kind of, I don't know, it just shows her paranoia, and she uses people in order to get to the things she needs, especially in the next episode.
Then we get, at the end of the episode, the first long scene we get of Kilgrave controlling people, and this is, you saw it briefly in the teaser trailer, where he walks into the apartment and tells the father figure, "You're going to invite me in," and he walks in. This is a brilliant scene. This is a great villain introduction. This is probably the best villain introduction in Marvel history, if you want to call it that, in the history of the movies, at least. I thought Fisk's was good. It was very subdued, and it was very contrary to what you would assume the Kingpin would be like. But this, right away, you get Kilgrave's MO, and you're terrified of what he's able to do and what he's willing to do.
Especially because he immediately locks kids in a closet, and then one of them pees themselves. And you can just kind of tell, like, oh, they're there forever. Like, they're all going to die.
Yeah.
And they don't really visit it again.
They don't, so I'm assuming those kids are dead.
Right.
I mean, it's dark. It's dark in a way where they didn't have to spell it out for you, but the implication is there, and I always think the implication, especially for psychological things like this, always more impactful than if you had outright said it. So
for sure.
It just works out well. Beautiful scene. David Tennant, of course, famous for playing the 10th Doctor, as well as many other roles, obviously. He's in Broadchurch. Great job. He's good at being so charismatic and so much of a creeper at the same time.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of see this guy being, like, in the right situation. Yeah, he seems like a nice, charismatic guy, as long as he's, has a front up. But also, there's something about him, a little creepy.
Yeah, for sure. And then right before we get the credits, we get a scene where Luke basically walks into Jessica's office and goes, "I saw you," and she's doesn't really understand, and then he's like, "No, I saw you. You saw me. I saw you," and they kind of have an understanding, and she's not really taking it, so he picks up a fucking power saw and saws into his abdomen as a way to demonstrate the fact that he can't be broken.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really good display. I really liked it. I thought it was going to be corny because you can kind of see it coming while you're watching the scene. And it worked because she plays horrified good.
Yeah.
So she does a good job. Anyways, it's just really cool. And, they're going to fuck a lot from now on.
Yeah. And that starts right away in episode 3, which is AKA, it's called Whiskey. The first thing that you see is them having superhero sex. It's hardcore. The comic book Alias had a lot of these scenes too, so I understand why. I don't know. Sex scenes could work fine in movies and TV shows. I think some shows can overdo it. Game of Thrones, for instance, does a lot of nudity that I think
superfluous.
It's superfluous. I'm all right with sex scenes that inform characters, though, and this did. I think maybe they did one too many or so. I think there was at least one that I remember that I thought, okay, we already got the point of it the first time.
Yeah.
And obviously the point is that their whole lives really haven't had anyone around like them, and anytime they've been in a sexual situation or in a relationship, they've had to hold back, and now they don't have to, so it's this big thing. And I understand that. That's good.
Yeah.
It informs the characters.
Yeah, and it also is very Twilight, if anyone's familiar with that.
One of the writers of Jessica Jones, this series, was the screenwriter of one of the Twilight movies too.
Well, there you go.
So
and because like Edward and what's her face, Kristen Stewart, have sex for the first time after she becomes a vampire, and they do it really hard, and they break things. And this is very similar to that, where it's finally this, I can just go sort of thing. And I'm a superhero, so I level with that. I empathize.
All I could think about during this scene is that this is in Hell's Kitchen. Matt, as you know, very heightened senses. Somewhere in Hell's Kitchen, he's at the very least hearing this and going, "Who the fuck is having superhero sex?" Worst case, he's smelling it. I don't know.
After the super coitus, Jessica basically walks into the bathroom and finds a picture in the medicine cabinet of Reva Connors, who is the woman she killed while under the control of Kilgrave, like the last person she kills right before she's no longer under control during the bus accident and stuff, and freaks out, and he finds out that it's Luke's dead wife.
Because she knew that already, though. That's the reason she was following Luke.
Yeah, but she's she's reminded of it. I guess.
No, you're right.
She tries to forget,
sure,
and just kind of go with it, and then is reminded that she's a fucked up person.
Yeah, fair enough. So Jessica goes and visits Jerry's wife, who is a doctor, because she's now on a mission to try and find the specific anesthetics that she can use.
fentanyl.
Yeah, to knock out Kilgrave. Also, Jerry wants her to get some dirt on her because of the divorce that's up and coming and all that jazz. But basically, it's a fruitless effort. We also see some scenes of her skulking around the hospital and finding where it is kept. And that comes into play later, which is a really good scene where we get a parallel kind of between her and Kilgrave. But we'll get to that closer to the end of the episode. Either way, Jessica dons a disguise, and it's like a pink heart scrubs.
Oh,
like,
yeah. And she
like
talks
visual
in this high
gags.
voice. She's like, oh my god, I just have to like find this for a doctor and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
It's funny to see that her play up the character she's definitely not.
Yeah, so I like the humor. See, people who said there was less action, I agree there was less action, but there was more focus on the characters than the humor, so it offset it for me. Maybe I wasn't expecting Daredevil 2.0. I was expecting a completely different show, and it seems like some people were expecting sort of the same tone as Daredevil, but with a different character.
I don't understand why there necessarily needs to be action in a superhero show. Like, I get it, like that's why they're impressive, but she's no longer a superhero. She's not stopping bank robbers. This is about the character and who she is. Like, this is a cerebral superhero thing.
Yeah.
This is like Sherlock.
A little bit, yeah.
You know
I can
what
see.
mean?
I
It's
don't know. I
darker.
enjoyed it.
It has some parallels. Also, a little bit of brooding, like a slow Batman story.
Sure, Batman,
I mean?
if he had been sexually assaulted. Now we get to Jessica's trying to convince more people to come forward because Jerry isn't totally convinced about this whole defending Hope thing. So they go on Jessica's stepsister's radio show because that's what she's famous for. Also that and the children's show. Yeah, Trish.
And Trish basically takes the opportunity to call out Kilgrave and call him like impotent and psychotic. And Kilgrave calls into the fucking show and threatens her blatantly as like, well, if you were actually calling a guy who could control minds all these names, wouldn't you think it would be insanely dangerous to do so?
Yeah,
Like, it's such an awesome call.
It kind of highlights the Purple Man's narcissism. He can't just sit back and allow, someone to call him names, even though, honestly, it wouldn't have done anything to him. If anything, he's damaging himself by going on the air. I mean, wouldn't anyone be like, that was weird that guy called and said that? Maybe that was the guy. I do like the implication, though, that they were talking about sort of people not believing Hope in general. And they cited some of the reasons was ever since the Avengers and the superheroes have become a big thing, people are using it as an excuse. And I can imagine in a world where superheroes exist, if you commit a crime or something, I could see you kind of being like, no, the aliens made me do it because aliens exist, So,
right. Especially because Loki could control people.
Yeah, so fair enough. I mean, I understand why people would be skeptical. At a certain point, when more and more people come forward, it becomes kind of a type deal, but it's an interesting point to bring up. I like that the shows are able to explore these implications of the Marvel Universe that the movies can't. For instance, in Daredevil, they talked about the rise of organized crime under the guise of rebuilding New York after the Avengers. That makes sense. That's interesting. But of course you can't cover that in a movie.
Sure. I also like that we figure out that Kilgrave is the type of guy that just would have to reply to every negative YouTube comment and just would never sleep. Like, no, fuck you. You're a douchebag.
Yeah.
No, I'll fuck your mom.
So now Jessica goes back to the hospital and she takes Malcolm with her. She pushes him into a cart full of medicine, and he still looks like a drugged out guy, obviously. And all the people kind of swarm, and this gives her the opportunity to go steal the medicine she needs for Kilgrave. Malcolm realizes what she's done, though, and it's kind of an interesting parallel between her and Kilgrave and what you're willing to do, how you're willing to use people to get to your own ends. Interesting.
Yeah. I would like to take this opportunity to really commend the guy who plays Malcolm throughout the series. He has to play a very transformative character. Like, he'll go from here to a totally different place, and he's just a really good actor who plays hurt well.
It's interesting.
Like, he clearly is an empathetic person that wants to do the right thing. And like right here, he has this look of like he's so betrayed and hurt that Jessica would do that when she was like the only person protecting him.
Yeah, it's interesting too that they went this direction because in the comics he's not a druggie. He's Jessica's assistant, for lack of a better word. He basically takes calls for the agency and stuff, and he's a fan of hers. So it's interesting that they took this character and changed it, but it still worked in the overall story. So good for that guy.
Earlier, when Jessica and Trish were walking out of the studio after the Kilgrave call, Trish had actually been approached by a fan who she thought was actually an assailant, and Trish had been taking Krav Maga classes in order to become self-proficient in self-defense. And she pretty much karate chops this guy in the throat. So later on, a cop comes to her door and is like, hey, this guy, there was an assault. He's not pressing charges, but I would like to question you about the situation. And, we should do this. Trish is pretty skeptical because she knows Kilgrave is out there. But eventually, she allows Officer Simpson into her home.
And he tries to kill her.
Immediately.
Yeah. The only thing that saves her is Jessica takes the anesthetic or whatever.
It's fentanyl.
Yeah, and gives it to her so that she appears dead to the cop, and then he leaves. So Jessica follows him to the house that we saw at the end of the last episode where Kilgrave had moved in.
She comes to the roof, and he's watching soccer, and he's yelling at it like a standard Englishman, and it's awesome.
I thought it was rugby.
Was it rugby? I don't know.
Rugby.
It was one of those English UK sports that no one watches, except for everyone else in the world. Yeah. And basically he tells the cop, okay, leave, no, go that way, and he points to the window, and he's going to make Simpson kill himself and jump off the roof of this building, which is fucked up, but also kind of dumb. Like, you'd have to leave and stop watching your game if they start investigating why this dude jumped off a building.
Well, worst case, the cops come to the door to investigate, and he says, I'm not here, go away, and they'll leave.
That's true.
He doesn't really
forget.
There's nothing they could really do to him. He'd go, it was an accident, leave. And they go, okay, bye.
Yeah, fair
anyway,
enough.
Also give me your badge and gun, because I like badges and guns. Anyway. So she, of course, saves Officer Simpson instead of confronting Kilgrave. Nice. I mean, honestly, I'll say this. Kind of dumb, especially from what we learn later. But I get they're trying to paint her as someone who's trying to be heroic and trying to do the right thing. And that is probably the right thing, though not necessarily the smart thing. It would have been better overall for everyone if she had instead let that dude jump and then taken down Kilgrave right then and there. But benefit of hindsight, I guess.
But I like the fact that she basically has to beat the shit out of an entire family to get to the end of this maze-like house to find Kilgrave.
Yeah, that was all right. I kind of expected the kids to show up again. I expected her to have to fight the kids.
I did too.
I'm kind of glad they didn't, because that would have been a little silly, but, whatever. This is, again, people brought up this scene specifically when talking about how the fight scenes weren't as good. But the point is that these aren't, like, criminal henchmen. These are people under control of a bad guy, so she's trying not to
punch
hurt
their
them.
skulls in.
Yeah, she's trying to hold back. If Jessica really wanted to, she could probably kill any normal human with one punch to the head if she really wanted to.
Well, she killed one with a punch to the chest, so...
Yeah, so, I don't know. I don't get the criticism about that. I understand that of course it's not as good as Daredevil, but it's not trying to be. It's more of an amateurish fight where she's trying to stop the people without actually hurting them. That's the point.
Right. And she's not trained. People keep forgetting that she's not trained, and she was only a superhero for like a week. But, that's besides the point, man. It doesn't even matter because it's so much more a psychological thing. And that's actually driven home right now at the end of this house. She finds a whole room pretty much dedicated to her face. And someone's been taking pictures of her. And it's clear because it's like in moments where Jessica is even taking pictures of someone else, in this case, Luke Cage.
Yeah.
And so she's super freaked out that Kilgrave's been monitoring her without her knowing it for months, it looks like.
Yeah, that was a pretty good cliffhanger ending. I mean, in fairness, I watched this all in one go, so nothing was really a cliffhanger for me. I stayed up until like 6 a.m. the next morning watching all of it.
I watched it over like 3 days, so it was pretty good for me.
But yeah, it's a pretty good ending. The images being pasted on the wall like a crazy person. It's a little cliche, but it was striking. It made sense. The room had sort of a purple hue. You've seen it. It all worked very well. These episodes really hammered home, if you didn't already get it after Hope shot her parents, that Kilgrave is just a despicable person. He really is just one of the most vile human beings to ever exist in the Marvel Universe. Maybe the worst, because his motives are entirely selfish. It's not even like he's trying to gain power or something. He already has all the power he could ever want. He just is a dick,
Yeah, it's awesome. And I do like that they play with the audience as far as how you're supposed to feel about Kilgrave throughout pretty much every episode until like the last 2, where you pretty much make your final, claim on how you feel about him, which is overall pretty negative.
Yeah.
But I do like that they it has like an ebb and flow, and sometimes you agree with people you wouldn't expect to agree with more than others. It's interesting. I just like that there's complexity to characters where there's usually one note to things like this. Like Daredevil always was one note. Foggy, you never thought for 1 minute that he wasn't a good guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sometimes you're like, I don't know what Trisha's motives are, even
Sure.
though she's Jessica's best friend, or anyone really involved. And it's just interesting to kind of have more of a caper than just a beat 'em up.
Even Jessica, I think some of her motives,
Absolutely.
It sort of begs the question, do the means justify the ends sometimes?
Sure.
I mean, overall, the answer is probably yes, but certainly there were times where it was like, oh, this is kind of a little scummy what you're doing. But anyway, those are the next 2 episodes. Very, very good. A very good season overall. And of course, we'll be back again to talk about the next time. And next time will be aka 99 Friends and probably a couple more. I'm not going to define which ones we're going to do, though, because I don't know.
Okay.
So thanks, everyone. You can always check us out on Twitter at @TheRealUnpop.
You can always subscribe and get more of our reviews. Of course, we did the entire season of Daredevil. We've done trailer reviews for everything.
If you want, you can always help support the show on Patreon at the link right here. Other than that, until next time, I'm Hugo.
And I am Jake.
And this has been Unpopular Culture.